What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and joining me is the very disappointed Michael J. Facci. The Pacers lose 155-104. Facci, what a tragedy of a game.
I don't think I'm the only one that's disappointed. I think the whole fan base was after this one. This was a tough game from start to finish. I want to say it was maybe 4-2 in favor of the Celtics. After that, I didn't feel good about it. I'm not gonna lie. It ended up being a 51-point loss. I said to you just before we started, I said, Alex, this has to be the worst loss that we have ever recorded after. I can't think of a beating this bad.
This is actually the second biggest loss point differential-wise in Pacers franchise history. The first was they lost to Golden State 150-91 previously. I forget what year it is. I'll look it up as we're talking, but it was definitely one of those games where you're like, okay, are they going to get to 50? That was back in 1976, 1977, okay. Facci. So that was, however many years ago that was. So we're talking a long time ago since the Pacers have lost like this. Now, they've had some other losses. Back in 1920, they lost by 46 to Toronto, 127-81 in Toronto, February 23rd, 2020. So that was one that was kind of familiar to me a little bit off the top of my head, but this was just unbelievable to watch. You even think, okay, I'm going to watch the fourth quarter. Maybe we can just lose by just like less than 40.
I was a less than 50 guy. I honestly, there's something about once it hits 50 that you're like, whoa, like now this is going to be talked about everywhere. Like this is where we make the highlights for all the wrong reasons. And then everybody talks about, Boston in a different type of light. Now, here's the thing. Boston on a night like tonight does deserve to be talked about in a different light because you saw coming into this game, their starting five averaged the most points in the league. They actually averaged 102 points per game. And it showed the difference that while we might be playing in the NBA, we are playing in a different league than the Boston Celtics. That's a team that has absolute championship or bust aspirations. And for the Pacers tonight, it just looked like we did not belong.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Tatum, 27 minutes, 30 points. He was averaging more than a point a minute, was a walking bucket, 9 of 15 from the floor, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. He looked like an MVP. He was a plus 36 for the night. So that was the best plus minus per ESPN stats of the game, which is just shocking to me. It's just like you watched it, you thought, okay, in the first quarter, the Pacers were hanging around a little bit. It was about 10-ish points away. You thought, okay, maybe something they could just hang on long enough to make a game out of this. Nah, no chance. The Celtics in the first quarter going on a 9-2 run, knocking down 3 threes in like just over a minute. And it's just like, okay, when it was 44-27, you just felt like it's going to be one of those nights, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse.
It had, because I talked about it with you last time, that through the first 2 games, the Pacers were giving up like 37 points per game in the first quarter. And I was like, oh, that is so bad. And then tonight, they give up 44 points. I mean, Boston, I just felt that they got everything they wanted. I believe in the first quarter, they shot 16 of 21 from the field. They were not missing from three-point land. And the crazy thing is that the Pacers were shooting good from the field as well. I mean, this is a Pacers team that actually shot 50% by halftime, but they let Boston shoot 55%. They let Boston go 10 of 17 from 3. I just felt that everything looked way too easy for the Celtics tonight. And I get it. This was a game that there was no Tyrese Halliburton out there. How is that going to help you defensively, though? There's no excuse about that. Jalen Smith didn't play either. There's no way Jalen Smith is making a 51-point difference in this game. The Boston Celtics looked phenomenal tonight. And the Indiana Pacers, I found myself after a little bit just kind of hoping for, some small things like, all right, when do we get a look at the rooks? Or can we cut it below 50? Or, is there anything I can hang my hat on in this game? And we'll get to some of those things later on.
Looking at the team stats, Facci, it's just mind-boggling. But let me throw this one out at you. The Celtics, They outscored the Pacers from the 3-point line by 45 points.
Whoa.
Indiana made a total of 5 threes. They attempted 37 of them. 13.6% from the field for your Indiana Pacers. Boston was 20 of 35 for 57%. Then you go to the free throw line. Boston, 27 of 28. 96.4% from the line. Indiana just 7 of 12. So they outscored us by 45 from 3 and 20 from the free throw line. It's a combined 65-point differential plus there for the Celtics in those two categories. You know, I never thought I'd see the day, but the Pacers actually outscored the Celtics in this one by 18 points in the points in the paint category. So Indiana had 70 of their 104 points in the paint, but they still jacked up 37 threes. And I mean, it was just every shot they took, it was just in and out. I mean, some of them were just bad misses, but some were just good looks. They just couldn't get them to fall. It's like, you know, they talked about it after the Bulls game. Like, yeah, you miss shots sometimes. Well, that Bulls game just stings even a little bit more now because you knew the Boston game was going to be tough. You knew Halliburton wasn't going to play like you said. You thought, okay, probably chalking this up as a loss. Let's see what we can do. It's like, no, we just got completely embarrassed. Thank God that wasn't the game on national television because I think we play the Celtics on national TV in January. We better hope that don't happen again.
And that's a really good point because we're only getting one on national television against Boston. If that had been the game, I'm sorry, but when we talk about asking for respect amongst the league, that would have been probably one of the only things that people remember about the Pacers this year. So, yes, thankfully that was not the national televised game, but adding up the 3 points, made and taken over the last two games, Pacers are 17 of 83 from three-point land over the last two games. It's about 20%. And, obviously even the 20%, that's better than what they shot tonight. So not good from three-point land. I do think, if you were going to rest Tyrese Halliburton for a game, you picked the right game because I just don't think anything would have been different. But, Alex, there's a couple different things to look at. We had 31 rebounds. The Boston Celtics had 58 rebounds. They nearly doubled the Pacers in a game where our leading rebounder was TJ McConnell with 7. TJ McConnell had 7, and the second highest was Miles Turner with 5. That can't happen.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is we couldn't hit anything, and we were taking the ball out of the net. I mean, there weren't even that many turnovers from the Pacers. So,
no, that's the one thing that they did the best. They had 9 turnovers in this game, which is usually, honestly, one of a winning recipe right there. Yeah. But to have 9 turnovers and lose by 51, you just know that just about everything else went wrong.
Yeah, it was just one of those games where it's like you find yourself laughing at the end of it because what else can you do? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like every single number statistic-wise is just bad. And it's like they're just egregious numbers too. It's like, okay, how are we going to talk about this and have fun with it? That's the main goal here. It's like we're trying to do these game recaps, but it's like this point, the recap is even without Tyrese Halliburton, like you said, we are in a different league than the Boston Celtics. At the end of the day, no matter how hard this Pacers team plays, they're just not going to be there talent-wise with Boston. I will say this. Quinn Buckner, it was funny because he was talking about Aaron Nesmith when he actually fouled Kristaps Porzingis going up for a dunk. We were down by like 21, 31 points at that point. I can't remember what it was. I think it was close to 31. And he was like, you got to love that effort. Just like, like at this point, like, yeah, it is nice to see a guy out there trying, but at the same time, you're down by 30-some points. I feel bad for the broadcast. Just a rough night trying to carry that in terms of being entertaining while watching such a rough basketball game.
And also trying to be positive because it would have been easy to just kind of lay it on there. And, those are the games that are a bit tough for Quinn and Chris to call. But, man, it just there's something about this game that just felt like, all right, you know what? After a while, I think by half, I mean, honestly, the Celtics outscored the Pacers in 2 quarters compared to what the Celtics did what the Pacers did in 3. The Celtics had, I want to say, 75 points by halftime. Pacers had less than that. They had 71. through 3 quarters. So this was a game you just knew was over. And to speak about what you mentioned about like trying to be a little bit positive, look for something. Obi Toppin had an alley-oop at one point, and I started tweeting out. It was sent out. I was like, Obi Toppin from outer space, and then I was like, don't tweet that. Some people they're just gonna rip me apart on Twitter because what does it cut it to 49? Like it was just one of those where you're like, there's really not many performances you could say, like this guy played great or anything. Like I'm looking at it right now. Obi Toppin's a minus 41, which is on paper, it looks awful to see, but it's not like, there's plenty of other guys like TJ McConnell was a minus 29 and he had the best stat line on the team. No one was going to have a good plus minus in this game. So it's a stat that you could in this game probably kind of throw out the window a little bit because it's not like anyone had a positive plus minus no matter what the score was.
Yeah, the only takeaways you can have from this are like, okay, what did we get to see with our reserves? Like you said, Ben Sheppard, Jarace Walker.
Yep.
I think this was both their first career baskets tonight.
It was.
And Jarace Walker, I think, was his a layup?
He had a layup to start. He put a good move, put it on the ground a little bit, had a little bit of kind of like a crossover, scored, got a block right after that. Honestly, yes, he was definitely like basket hunting in the fourth quarter because, look, the game's out of reach. Why not?
Yeah,
go for it.
Why not?
He was aggressive, and honestly, I loved what I saw. He finished 4 of 6 for 8 points, played the whole fourth quarter. He had 2 rebounds. He had 3 assists. One was to Ben Sheppard getting him involved. He got Obi Toppin involved, and I mentioned that block. So I thought that on a night where obviously it's hard to say because those minutes weren't meaningful, but he looked good out there, at least offensively, of like, hey, that ball was going in the hoop.
Yeah, Ben Sheppard had 2 threes tonight. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious to say this, but the Pacers had 5 total threes made. Ben Sheppard had 40% of the made threes for the Pacers.
2 of 4 shooting.
So, yeah, I mean, he didn't shoot the ball bad. I think Jarace Walker came in, and it was interesting to see him kind of play a little small ball 5 next to Obi Toppin while Isaiah Jackson was on the bench for this moment to give him some rest. I kind of liked seeing that wrinkle a little bit, and I felt like their offense was a little more fun to watch when we saw that. Now, that's not a great takeaway, but I was like, I want to go back and look at the numbers and just see what they did. Yeah. Like, it was bad. I mean, they gave up a ton of points in the fourth quarter, so I'm sure there's nothing great to take away from that. But
46 points in the fourth. It's going to be tough.
Because I will say this, like, it intrigues me more to think about Jarace Walker playing a small ball 5 than to see Isaiah Jackson play a third-string center minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you there.
I just feel like Jarace is more skilled, can switch 1 through, or not 1 through, but at least like 3 through 5. You feel comfortable with that?
I'd say 3 through 5, yeah.
And he's a better rebounder, in my opinion. Might not be the same shot blocker, but I just feel like he's more active. I'd personally rather see Jarace out there than Isaiah Jackson if that's what it comes down to. But it all depends upon the matchup, too. I just, Isaiah had some okay moments in this game, but,
he did.
Still a learning process for him as well, and all these young guys just trying to get themselves figured out. But, wasn't a great night for Jordan Nwora. As many minutes as he's got, felt like he couldn't find the ocean when he was shooting.
No, he couldn't. And, like, he's still someone that I root for, but so far I just feel like he puts so much pressure on himself when he gets in these games to be like, I gotta score. I gotta score. Yeah, and it's just not working out so far. I mean, 2 of 8 tonight in 21 minutes, 3 turnovers. He had 3 assists, but at this point it was just like, oh man, who cares? I just feel like against Washington, he did the same thing. He was 2 of 7 in 6 minutes. So when he gets in there, he is aggressively putting up shots. He's 4 of 15 in 2 games. I mean, 15 shots in 27 minutes for Jordan. Obviously, that feels like a lot. And, you can't blame him because when he comes in there, the game is out of reach. Yeah. But, man, just to go back to Ijax real quick, obviously it's not sexy or so, but I thought that he played, decent today. You talked about it. He had 4 blocks. 4 blocks. It was good to see. 4 blocks to 1 foul is something that I thought was good. The baskets that he scored, I thought Buddy Hield, I remember at least 2 of them. Buddy set him up with some of the easiest baskets you'll ever get in your life. was good to just see Ajax, flush it. It's not like he was really putting the ball, on the floor and making any moves or anything. It was just standard, standard dunks. So I think that it's a game that you went, okay, all right. You know what? He didn't hurt the Pacers out there compared to how they were already being hurt. But one thing that I do want to bring up is, Alex, if Daniel Theis isn't going to play in a 51-point blowout against his old team, with Jalen Smith out, when do you see Daniel Theis seeing the court?
I will say this: he had the best plus minus of anybody on the Pacers.
He did, absolutely. Only guy to not give up a basket.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to play in a blowout like this anyway. It might be a little bit more disrespectful to play him in a game like this. You know what I mean? You want to give Jarace and Isaiah time to get minutes in there when they're usually not getting it. You're trying to develop and see what you have. I did like them experimenting a little bit with Obi in the fourth quarter instead of going, because they could have went to Theis there. That's when they could have went to it when they
definitely
took Isaiah out. But I think out of respect, that was part of it. Not saying like, oh, here's the 14th man on our roster that's our 13th man that's active tonight.
Yeah.
He's not going to play. I don't know. I don't think he would have done much of anything either to really change the trajectory of this game.
Not at all.
Maybe he comes in there and is kind of an enforcer for a little bit in the second quarter and things go a little different. I doubt that though. To this point, I really don't know what his value is. It's
a great point right there. And I'm definitely go on.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not trying to take away too many talking points here for us, but I just feel like if they're not going to play him whatsoever, obviously they do want to move off of him to do right by him because you got 4 centers now with him on the roster. So find a place to put him where you can trade him and get him to a spot where he can get some minutes. But it's like, if he's not on the court, how many of these teams are really going to be offering anything for him? So it's tough. I feel like if they were to at least give him some backup minutes in a game like tonight, maybe show other people what he's available, what he has. But at the same time, I think anybody that trades for him knows who he is. I don't think there's any question mark of like, oh, who is Daniel Theis? But you got to imagine the guy is getting kind of frustrated. He played 7 games last year for the Pacers and hasn't played since in the NBA. And it's like, it's not his fault he was dealt to a team with 4 centers. That's not what he signed up for. So got to figure the Pacers are going to look to find him a new home ASAP.
All due respect to Daniel Theis, at this point, I can't see him being anything more than salary filler in a trade because we talked about it earlier. Like when Memphis, lost Steven Adams, it was like, whoa, okay, where could Daniel Theis be on that list? If Theis isn't playing, period, he's on no one's list. And it's unfortunate, but that's how it is. Is like if a team has a need for a center to that point, they're going to be looking for a center that's actually playing out there that can help them win. And Theis, I think, could help more teams win. But if you don't see him, it's hard to really be on someone's radar or expect really anything out of it other than what could be potentially maybe a pick that never conveys and taking back some other salary that maybe, I don't know, someone else just rides the bench at that point. But it's going to be tough. And I think that Theis is someone who we still haven't heard anything really about of like he's been a professional, but at some point that's going to wear on him a big time because he does still want to have value in this league and get a next contract. And at this point, it's really, you don't want to go on 2 years of really not playing. And I know we're only a couple games in, but I find it hard to believe that something's going to change when there's still so much unproven with Isaiah Jackson that you still want answers from.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's just tough. And you feel bad for the guy. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
Rick Carlisle can praise him all he wants for his Olympic gold medal that he got every time he talks about him. I mean, every time Carlisle talks about him, it's like, we got an Olympic, not a gold medalist, but, he won the gold for FIBA this year.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, sorry, I probably said that wrong. I apologize for that. But he did get the gold with Germany. And he played a pivotal role in them getting there. He had some really good games along the way. And they've talked about it a couple different times, Carlisle has, about how he's been in consideration to get into the rotation. And it's just like, okay, you don't have to say that, but it's probably somewhat true. I don't think Rick would just lie about it, but I don't understand why in a game like tonight he doesn't even see the floor. But
That's where I'm at.
Save him the embarrassment, obviously, when you're down in the fourth like that. But it felt like in the second or third, maybe get him in there just to see if he can change anything up by adding an enforcer, a veteran presence, maybe someone that can kind of just go out there and do a little bit more than maybe what you're getting. But at the end of the day, this Celtics team is top tier. They're top 3 team in the NBA, and your Pacers are hoping to make the playoffs. I mean, that's the difference between these two teams is the gap between the talent and the fact that they went out and got Drew Holiday. It makes them that much better because Drew Holiday is kind of hot and cold when he's playing, but when you got Jason Tatum going off like he did and then Drew Holiday doing what he does, it's like when he made that three at the top of the key, I was like, good grief. If they're all hitting threes like this, Sam Hauser, I think he had 5 of 7 off the bench.
Yeah, he did.
It's just insane. They were just lights out. Sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles, and the Pacers, unfortunately, were on the receiving end of a complete and total beatdown. Got a good old can of whoopee, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, and boy, that cookie crumbled tonight. All right, you couldn't take a bite out of that. It was all dust and crumbs at that point. But going back to your point on Daniel Theis, look, it's not like this was KG or Paul Pierce returning to the Garden and, you got to get him in there. But I felt like in the third quarter, just like you mentioned, Theis could have got a few minutes just to see, all right, get out there. Let's see. It's, at that point, it's still like a 30-point game, but it's not a 50-point game. And I think that would have been nice, but at the same point, look, I don't have a bone to pick with Rick over not playing Daniel Theis in this game. I think this was just a very telling sign to say that, hey, don't expect Theis to make these appearances, especially if you have a healthy Jalen Smith who's more than earned those minutes. And I think for Ajax, you look at it, you said, okay, all right, you know what? He showed something tonight to an extent that you wouldn't say we can't play him again next time. So I don't think he did anything to say, you know what, next time we're switching it up. We're going Theis over Ajax. Oh, wait, we'll see about that. But yeah, to your point on Sam Hauser, I mean, it just felt like who wasn't making shots for Boston? In the end, it felt like, I found myself just being like, look, get O'Shea a basket. He got one, and it was like, all right. It was just like, I'm not going to root for the other team, but they do have a former Pacer over there, and I like to see O'Shea in there. And, he ended up getting some good run, looking at 20 minutes, made a shot, hit 2 free throws, 2 steals, whatever. But this was one of those performances that was very easy to want to move on from. It was one of those where I texted you to say, hey, you want to hop on right away so we could kind of get through this, because I want to be able to move on. And I hoped that the team would have been able to say, all right, you know what, we really let one slip against Chicago. Let's come out fired up against Boston. But I do feel there is this different feeling when Tyrese isn't out there. You might not believe as much, but on a night like tonight, I really just think the Pacers, it wouldn't have mattered who was out there. Michael Jordan in his prime probably could have been out there. You're still probably losing by 20 instead of 50. So I just think this was a night that was easily not our night. I hope there's not another one of these, but there will be many more that are our night.
I would be surprised if we have another loss this bad
in the next 40 years. Hopefully not, because the last one was in the 70s. I'm good going another 40 years without this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's tough to kind of see a game like this happen. And thankfully, I was only really able to watch the second half. I was trying to get caught up in the first half. I had some stuff going on tonight. And you're texting me the stats, and I was like, okay. I did turn on some YouTube to watch some first quarter, second quarter highlights, and yeah, it wasn't great. So, I mean, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch everything to get more of a feel of it. But just watching the second half, man, it was tough. I mean, they just played a bad game of basketball. There's nothing else you can really chalk up to it. But I will say this. It feels, once again, like we are too reliant upon our three-point shot being the focal point of our offense. And I don't know exactly how we shift that and kind of become more balanced, but it definitely feels like Rick Carlisle is adamant that he wants to take a lot of threes. And even if you have good three-point shooters, when they're not falling, you got to find different ways to score the basketball. They did a little bit more tonight. We talked about it, 72 points, I think, in the paint. but they just gotta, I don't know, they just gotta figure something out to get a little bit more simplified offensive looks for their guys that don't always result in getting a wide open three. I think they need to really start thinking about ways to maybe, let's get Turner in the post a little bit more. Or
Yep.
let's see if we can get Mathurin getting a curl for a mid-range jumper to get more of those kind of looks, just to get guys going. Because if you're constantly shooting threes all the time, yeah, if you're hitting them, you're going to win. You're going to be in a lot of games. But if you're not, you're going to lose by 51 points.
Yeah. This felt like the Houston Rockets of, I guess at this point, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, where lived and died by the three. And then everybody remembers when it came down to the playoffs that mattered most, they missed like the last 28 threes in that series against Golden State. They lost. You can't be too reliant on the three-point ball because we mentioned it, 17 of 83 over the last two games. I'm sorry, you're not going to beat anybody with those numbers. And a night like tonight, Boston had it going from three, polar opposite, just a massive difference. But here's where I'm happy in basketball. Sometimes people complain there's too many games. This isn't like football where you get beat this bad and all of a sudden you start to dwell on the whole season. I had people immediately tweeting at me, this is going to be a 29-win season. Is this the year that we fire you in the front office? It's like, guys, whoa. 48 hours ago, we were nearly 3-0. Like, let's pump the brakes. The hope this year was to be able to be roughly a 500 basketball team.
Yeah.
So that's what the Pacers are right now. They're 2-2. They're a 500 basketball team. We have not seen the best of this team. Offensively, we saw some good stuff. Defensively, we got a long way to go. But you know what? Hey, the good thing is there's about 78 more games left in the season. It could be a little bit more if we end up winning this play-in tournament. But I don't want to get too carried away over here. So for now, 78 more games to go. I'm excited to move on to the next one and put this game in the past.
Now, to be fair, I did have the Pacers at this point being 2-2 on the season when we did our records earlier in the year. Remember when we predicted them? However, I did pick them losing to Cleveland on the road and winning against Chicago, so I got those flipped. But I think anybody, if you looked on paper at Boston, never felt like a win.
I don't think anybody predicted that.
It's just the fashion in which they lost was such a disappointment, such a embarrassing type of situation. But you can't be mad about it. It is what it is. The Pacers lose this one. Whether they lose by 1 or 55, at the end of the day, a loss is a loss in the win-loss column. It doesn't matter how many you lose by. So if you take this game out of the stats, that'd probably be a smart thing to do when you're looking at your statistics. I would say kind of throw one of these games away just because it really doesn't line up with what they're doing offensively, defensively, because I can see them being one of the worst defensive teams now because of this amount of points they gave up. So small sample size, water finds its level. Pacers back in action Friday night. First in-season tournament game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll see the new court. We'll see the new jerseys. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that, so I guess that can be kind of a way we end this here, a little bit of a positive note. Thoughts on the court being blue with gold down the middle?
Sometimes different is good, sometimes different isn't. I thought these weren't the Pacers' colors by any means. It was like a very, very light blue. I don't know.
An aqua color almost.
Like I would say aqua is probably the best description on that. Didn't really seem like a lot of people liked it. At first, I was like, that's different. And then I was like, I don't know. I like the fact that they are trying to make this into something different. Like everybody having a new court, new jerseys for this. Okay, they're giving it a new feel to it. So let's just see how they look on the court with the new jerseys. But between the jerseys and the court, I think we probably could have did a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. Like when I saw the court, I was like, wow. But you know what? I'm glad they did something like this because it stands out. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I actually like the Indy in the middle of the court. I thought that looked pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Maybe the people didn't like the font. I've seen a lot of people hate on this. I don't hate it that much.
A lot.
I don't hate it that much. I'm not a big fan of the color scheme not really matching who we are.
I think that's where I'm at.
But it's like I was looking at some of these courts and I'm like, I didn't even know who some of them were.
Yeah.
If you go through and look at all 30 of them, it's funny to me that Denver's looks more like Golden State than really anything. So I was kind of like, man, that looks like the Golden State court, but it's actually Denver. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's different, but I love the Indy on the front and the center court. I think that does look kind of cool. The color looks a little bit similar to what the Pacers' old logo used to be back in like the ABA days. Not the exact blue, but kind of similar to that. So yeah, I'm fine with it. It's only going to be on the home court for 2 games out of the 80 or out of the 40, 41, whatever. So just like relax. It's not that deep. They're trying to make the regular season mean a little bit more. It is super early in the season to try to make something like this matter to me. Probably would have been smarter to wait till like December, but at that point, you don't want to run into the All-Star break and all that. It's a weird thing to do, but overall, I love that they're going to do it Tuesdays and Fridays. They play 4 games. That's it. You're going to see 4 games on these courts for the Pacers. Just relax. It's not that deep.
I do think they had to make it drastically different early on because it is easy to overlook this at the 5th game of the season. To be like, oh, wait, like, oh, wow, I would have missed it if the court was exactly, whatever. The average fan probably would have missed it if the court was exactly the same and the jerseys were the same, but they were just saying, well, this is the in-season tournament. It's like, okay, you got to do something that stands out, and that's definitely what they did. Whether it's good or bad, you had to stand out, and I think this is going to take some time to get used to and all that, and they are really pushing this. We'll see if the players care enough. I know it's a totally different, topic, but like this is the first year that they really tried to enforce, star players playing more. So far, Phoenix has guys sitting out. I just feel like the Sixers had it with James Harden. Like, what's your thoughts on that so far? Of like, do you think this is going to work with them resting players less because they have to?
I mean, they can try. I think it'll be better for more nationally televised games. Maybe not for everybody's sitting out all the time. I mean, you're still going to have your scheduled rest days. Like I think Joel Embiid was potentially going to miss one of the games they had on Sunday, I think it was, for rest. And I saw a lot of fans mad about that because it was like questionable rest. I think he ended up playing the game, so it didn't really matter. But I get it if you're trying to like monitor stuff on back-to-backs. Like I know Jonathan Isaac, right? He set out in back-to-back and a back-to-back with Orlando. But like the dude's had injuries every single year. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So if there's guys that have injury problems, and I have no problem with it, I really do think Bradley Beal is hurt. Devin Booker, same thing. I do think they're both actually injured because I think they've missed 2 games in a row. So that's not a good sign.
Beal hasn't played yet, and I think Booker might have missed 3 games, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember what their record is. I just know last night, that game on Tuesday night was crazy.
Yeah, that was
the steal
Spurs,
from Durant, man. Keldon Johnson,
that was
guy.
Cool. I always love me some Keldon Johnson. Always.
Claim it tonight.
Huh?
Claim it tonight. That you're a Keldon Johnson guy.
I've always been a Keldon Johnson guy. Always. I can't tell you how many times I brought him up in trades, the fake trades that we've made over here. Obviously, the Pacers never pulled the trigger, but real good player, game-winning play. I just think that the Spurs are going to be becoming that team that, due to the spotlight on Victor Wembanyama, people are going to be keeping an eye on them. And it's cool to see them go from, at the bottom to like, you just know they're going to be building something. They're going to surround Victor with the right players. And I think that was cool for a team that coming to this year had really no expectations to then beat the team with all the expectations.
Yeah, no, it was a great moment. It was really cool to see. I didn't stay up for the game. I was actually asleep by 9:30 on Tuesday night. So thank God for that. But with that being said, Facci, I'm kind of excited that this game is over.
Me too.
We're moving on. I'll be in the building for the first in-season tournament game, so I'm excited to see what that's like. Try to get some pictures of the court for everybody that, just from my vantage point, and let you all know what it looks like if you aren't able to make it there in person. But if you are there in person, come by, say hi, let me know, who you are, because sometimes I don't recognize everybody. I see people on Twitter, I don't recognize who they are in person. So if I happen to be like, hey, who are you? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying, like, tell me your Twitter handle so I can put an avatar with a face. I just want to make sure that I'm getting to know everybody that I can. But with that being said, Fan of the Week segment is back tomorrow, Facci, with some Pacers trivia. I'm going to have to make those questions a lot more simple. If you listen to today's episode, I might have given you a question from today's episode.
Oh,
so
maybe
keep that in mind. Okay,
I think I know what that question is.
Yeah, you might even have 2 of them from today's episode on the quiz.
But you got to tune in.
You got to tune in to even the losses to make sure you get the easy answers for the quiz here. But with that being said, Facci, go ahead and tell the people where they can please find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/settingthepace, a Pacers podcast, where this video will be available for you to watch if you're just eager to hear our thoughts on the Pacers getting thumped by the Boston Celtics. But if you're ready to put this one behind us, looking forward to the new court in person with the new jerseys and taking down the Cleveland Cavaliers once again for the first in-season tournament game in Pacers franchise history, then Facci, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!